Whatever you allow into your life eventually shapes your life. Stop meeting people halfway. Here's why it's holding you back. Now, people will tell you that healthy relationships require compromise. They tell you that if you want a relationship to work, you have to meet people halfway. I hear that all the time, and maybe in some instances that's true. If we're deciding where to eat, sure. If we're deciding what time to meet up, of course. If compromise moves us in a positive direction toward the same thing, for sure. But the problem is people have taken this saying and they try to apply it to everything. And that's where I think we get in trouble. So my first question when I hear that is, halfway to what? People don't really stop to ask that question. Halfway has become this sacred space where meeting halfway is somehow the most mature thing to do. It isn't. Halfway is just a location. Whether it's a good place depends on what we're moving toward. If people are moving toward mutual greater understanding, then meeting halfway is great. If people are moving towards revealing the truth, halfway is a beautiful place. If people are trying to solve a problem together, halfway is a great place to build trust. But what if you're being asked to meet halfway to something you've already outgrown? What if you've already spent years discovering that certain habits weaken you, or that certain ways of thinking keep you trapped, or that a certain relationship pulls you away from the life you're trying to build? Should you still meet halfway? And why? Because somebody told you that that's what good people do? Personally, I've never been into doing things strictly because society says it's good. I'm more interested in the truth. And there's a difference. Something can sound constructive, yet be destructive. Something can sound like a wise choice, but still lead you astray. Words don't impress me. Results do. Clear observation does. Experience does. I've noticed something about myself, and that is that real change has never come from arguing with people. It's come from things that I've observed for myself. Sometimes in an instant, sometimes it's taken me a long time to understand. Sometimes it's making the same mistake over and over and over until I finally get it, to the point where eventually it becomes so clear that it's no longer an opinion. It becomes understanding, and once you truly understand, something inside you changes. You stop negotiating with it, and it's not like being stubborn. It's because you've seen. You touch a hot stove, and now you know the stove is hot. There's no words or argument that will show you otherwise. You don't need a motivational speaker to convince you not to touch it again. You don't need to wake up every morning and read scientific papers that remind you that touching hot stoves hurts. You saw it, you experienced it, that understanding changed your behavior. Now stop and imagine someone saying to you, come on, just meet me halfway here. Halfway to what? Pretending stovetops don't burn me? Halfway to acting like I didn't learn what I've already learned? That isn't open-mindedness, that's pretending. For me, I've found that life becomes far less complicated when I don't pretend to not know what I do know. Think about how much time people spend arguing with themselves. I know I shouldn't. I know this never ends. I know that every time I do this thing, I regret it. And then listen to the language. Keywords, I know. If you already know, why are you negotiating? And this isn't about other people. This is about me, myself. Why would I argue with myself about something I've already verified through personal observation? Sometimes the answer is comfort. Sometimes the answer is familiarity. Sometimes the answer is loneliness. Sometimes the answer is seeking approval. Whatever the reasoning, it doesn't change the observation or the reality. One thing that I've noticed over the years is that every choice you make trains you in one direction or another. People think of training as going to the gym, and it isn't just that. Training truly never stops. Every conversation trains something. Every reaction trains something. Every excuse trains something. Every difficult situation trains something. Everything you tolerate trains something, especially the things you tolerate. There's a lot of talk where people are questioning why standards matter. It's because standards determine what you allow into your life. And whatever you allow into your life eventually shapes your life. And that's simply an observation. If I repeatedly choose honesty, honesty becomes easier. If I repeatedly avoid responsibility, avoiding responsibility becomes easier. If I repeatedly make excuses, excuses start showing up before I even realize it's happening. If I repeatedly tell myself the truth, eventually I stop needing people to point it out for me. My own observations become enough, and that's freedom. Freedom isn't necessarily doing whatever you like. Freedom is no longer being controlled by the things that used to control you. That's a completely different thing. And once you've experienced freedom, why would you move backwards towards things that keep you in chains? So again, halfway to what? And people often confuse helping somebody with following along. Those aren't the same thing. If you're climbing out of a hole and someone is still standing at the bottom, you don't make progress by climbing back down and standing next to them. You help them by showing them the way out, and there's a huge difference in actions taken. Oftentimes, the greatest encouragement you could give anybody is to just be an example. Not your words, but your life, your consistency, your refusal to abandon what you've learned. I've had people tell me, you've changed. And I'm like, good, that's supposed to happen. If I'm paying attention in life, why wouldn't I change? If observation isn't changing me, then what am I observing? If experience isn't refining me, then what are my experiences doing? Change isn't the enemy. Unconscious change is. Drifting is. Living by momentum that you didn't choose is. That's dangerous. I don't want to become a different person by accident. I want my actions to follow my understanding, and that takes responsibility. Oftentimes, people mistake responsibility for judgment. They think if you refuse to participate in something, that means you are judging them. It's not necessarily true. If I decide not to consume poison, that isn't a judgment against everyone else. That is simply taking action on what I've learned. Everyone else has that responsibility, not just me, everyone. No one else has to live with the consequences of your decisions. You do. So why would someone else's discomfort overrule your understanding? I've thought about this a lot. There are people that I genuinely care about, people that I'd help out in a heartbeat, or if I got like a call in the middle of the night, I'm answering the phone. People that I'd make true sacrifice for. But sacrificing for other people and sacrificing your understanding are different things. One is love, one is self-betrayal. Those shouldn't be confused. True friendship has never required me to be less honest. Real friendship has never required me to ignore what I see clearly. Real friendship hasn't required me to present a smaller version of myself just so the other person doesn't feel challenged. In fact, the best relationships I've ever had have been built on the complete opposite. They challenged me. They expected more from me. They refused to let me hide behind excuses. And this isn't always comfortable, but they were honest. And that's worth far more than comfort. Now, people will present what they're after as acceptance, when really what they're after is agreement. Those aren't the same thing. I can accept that you're on your own path. I can accept your freedom to make your own decisions. I can care about you. I can enjoy your company. None of that requires me to agree with everything you do. None of that requires me to participate in things that lead to nowhere that I want to go. So sometimes saying no is the most honest thing you can do. You're not trying to be harsh, you're just being honest. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we pretend that loving someone requires abandoning clarity. And I don't think it does. I think clarity is one of the highest forms of love, because clarity refuses to pretend. It refuses to lie. It refuses to validate something simply because it's popular or because someone is seeking reassurance. If I really care about something, I don't want to see them becoming comfortable with something that is harming them or will harm them. And I don't want somebody doing that for me. Hold me accountable. Challenge me. Ask me difficult questions. If I'm wrong, show me. But don't ask me to ignore things that I've already seen simply to make the conversation more palatable. That's too expensive. I've paid far too much for the lessons I've learned. Not just in money, but in money too, but in mistakes and years, consequences, relationships, injuries, failures, in getting things wrong and developing the humility to admit it. Understanding has a price, and once you've gained it, don't give it away so cheaply. Don't compromise it. So when someone tells me to meet them halfway, I don't automatically say yes. I smile and I ask, halfway to what? If halfway brings us towards greater honesty, I'm all in. If halfway brings us towards greater understanding, I'm all in. If halfway moves us towards greater responsibility, I'm all in. If halfway moves us toward being stronger, clearer, and more aware, I'm all in. But if halfway requires me to move toward confusion, toward excuses, toward dependency, toward pretending that I haven't already learned these lessons that life has taught me, then I can't meet you there. It's not that I don't care, because I do. I care enough to live according to what I've learned. I care enough to allow my actions to meet my understanding. And I care enough to continue to move toward what I've found to be true. So before you decide to meet someone halfway, ask yourself the question that nobody asks. Halfway to what?